Okay, so what we think and where UniPhi is positioned as a bit of a unique thing in this AI story is the fact that we, for 23 years now, have been a unifying source for portfolio and project related data. And this graphic, again, not trying to be a zealot, but developed by Claude in literally 5 minutes for me to do this webinar today, demonstrates what we've been trying to, well, what we've achieved really during that development period. So UniPhi has a very broad web application that enables you to direct enter a whole range of information. You can also pull information from a whole variety of other sources into a structured database, a structured semantic model coming out the other side, and accessing that data now through our REST API. Chances are that will evolve with this new MCP thing coming out, but right now what you can do is still pretty cool. And as opposed to not using UniPhi and having to deal with a whole bunch of disparate data sources that we've already cleaned up for you, if you like, in addition to supporting just the day-to-day activity that one needs to do to manage a project. And so by providing that service of managing a project in a structured way and pulling in data from a variety of sources, we get this richness that we need to be able to leverage AI. Without that, I don't believe many companies can really get the best out of it. There's obviously great capability in it being able to build PowerPoint slides and write documents for us and things like that. But in terms of generating, say, estimates and generating forecasts and generating opinions on your business, I think you need a really well-defined data set for that. And that's what we give you. And what I see for AI competitive advantage, and I'm not Robinson Crusoe on this. This isn't my own thoughts, I guess, in a way. I'm stealing others, but the real value for businesses in AI is in proprietary data. And UniPhi doesn't own the data. It's your data when you use our product, and it's the platform provider for you to capture that information and know that it's good. And if you can then do what I'm doing in this webinar, or use Power BI, or put it into a data warehouse and connect it up with other data sources if you have to, you can then start to create real competitive advantage for your services and improve margins, make money, what we're all in it for. Or if you're in it not for profit, improve the social and environmental impacts that you're trying to achieve. So that's what our business case is for this. This is how we see we're helping. It's really difficult otherwise, and we've seen, people that we've come into, companies that we've come into, really struggling with that until they onboard our product and start to use it in anger. So that's the workflow left to right that you've all got access to now. What we're doing is in this bottom right-hand corner, we're building these apps. And as I said, I'm going to do this through the Claude code interface as a non-software developing person with the goal of encouraging you guys who know your data, know your business, know what you want to achieve, to be able to do the same thing. That's about it for that. Now, just to extend this left-hand side of the conversation a little bit, we also show this slide in our sales demos. And, this is a sample set of some of the things we've integrated with. And so that left-hand side data capture is quite broad. In this, we've got one output, the other end being the Power BI visualizations. But there's actually 4 reporting platforms in UniPhi, and this app development creates a 5th or /6 because there's always data warehouse capability and Power App capability as well. But just don't limit yourself with how you can get data into the system, because that's what you need to be able to drive a huge amount of productivity and insights and capability out the other end. So we're going to start a little bit ahead of time in terms of getting to the fun part of the webinar. So to get to the fun part, if you were to leave this webinar and start straight away and you had access to Claude, so you'd need to get a subscription to Claude Code. You can get a personal subscription for that on I forget the name of the license, but the free one won't give it to you, but it's like $20 a month. It's not expensive. You will be limited by the tokens you can use for that, but you should be able to do what I'm doing in this demonstration under that account. And you're not limited for very long. It's a time-based thing, and then you can have another go. When you've got that installed, it'll be a little app you install, and you've got your login and you log into Claude. You'll need to also then get on your local machine because it'll develop locally, which goes back to the IP. You will own the IP that it generates, and you'll need to talk to your internal IT about what you're allowed to do and how it works and all that sort of stuff for data sovereignty or any of those issues. But ultimately, what I'm about to do can be quarantined, not shared with anyone else. It's not pushing data out into the internet. It's not being owned by Claude to train anything else. It's just you working with a colleague, working with an employee, if you like, and generating IP for your business. And to do that, you're going to need a technology stack. Now, you can pick whatever you like. What I'm going to do in this, what I've already set up in this demonstration, the buzzwords you need to tell Claude to use is a Python-based backend, which is where all the data is going to be stored and the algorithms to do the calculations and things like that. A React front end, which is a nice, snappy sort of platform for doing simple web applications. You're going to need to authenticate to your unified data, and you're going to need to tell Claude that that's a basic forms authentication. And you're probably best to tell it that it's a large REST API, because when I did it, it freaked out and went, oh, wow, this is a biggie. And I had to say, that's okay, Claude, we're only going to use 2 endpoints, sorry. So we're only going to use 2 endpoints today. There's probably 130, I think, in the overall UniPhi application. And one of the jobs for you to do is to get a better understanding of the model. It doesn't require, again, software development, just needs to understand, and I'll show you the documentation in a moment. You just need to understand how the model connects from a semantic perspective. And one of our UniPhi 22 deliverable releases is better documentation on that. We have quite good documentation of the API in Swagger, which is embedded in your UniPhi application, which I'll show you in a moment. But how that sticks together, we normally send people Power BI files to demonstrate that, and with the model already defined, so you can get some support from us on those elements. But these are some of the trickier bits that you'll need to get your head around. But there's some things you can do that are very, very simple that I'm going to show you in this presentation. So you're telling Claude you only need 2 endpoints. I'll give you the URL and the endpoints plus a specification once the environment is set up. So you're telling it to create this environment first and to connect to the UniPhi application first. That actually took me longer than to build the app. That was quite long, and I'll show you how I started and how simple it was to start. But it does all the work. So when I say long, it's not a lot of effort from you. You'll get notifications when it needs you to click, yeah, okay, keep going, or maybe a question. And then you can be having coffee or running another meeting or whatever else you want to do. So that's the stuff that you need to do first. And then once you've done that, you can then start into where I'm going to start now. And so getting to that, I'm going to escape out of this PowerPoint. And what I've done is I've just launched an app called Claude, right? So it's a little app that'll install. You launch it from Windows, and this is it. You're looking at it now. And when you hover on this little hamburger up here, you've got a chat and a code if you've logged in as a user with the right access. So I'm in the code section now. I can't go to the chat because there's sensitive stuff there, but in the code section, it'll have recent coding. And this is the one that I created when I was playing around about 6 weeks ago in preparation for this webinar. And all I did to begin was to say, connect to a REST API to be the data source of an app with a business object layer in the middle. That was it. That was literally it. And it ran off and said, okay, what kind of app, what sort of REST API, what sort of technology stack, which I answered with, you see the answer there, and then off it went. And it started to create things, and then it would ask me something else, and what authentication was I using? It assumed a lot. It said, oh, you must be using something else, and I had to tell it no, and things like that. This is what I'm doing. It likes to jump in, so you got to be careful about when you hit the enter, because otherwise it'll run off and start doing something, and you haven't actually given it any requirements yet. So my original thing of just being very vague and very high level, I wouldn't do anymore, but that was how I started. And so this ran along and actually created an application. From the moment I got the data environment set up, it took around 30 minutes. We'll see how long this one takes today because I'm starting with that already set up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and create a new session. And to save you having to watch me type something out with 2 fat fingers, I've already written up what I want to ask it. And so I'm going to paste it in here, and I'll walk you through it. So I haven't hit enter yet. I'm going to tell it, I'm just going to put a preface here. So it's going to do different endpoints. So I had the project one before, but I didn't have the timesheet one. So it's going to use the timesheet endpoint and the project endpoint to create 4 charts with parameters down the left-hand side of the screen. Chart 1 is an XY scatter diagram with duration of a project in days on the Y-axis and average cost on the X. It's going to use the difference between the earliest timesheet entry date for that project and the latest timesheet entry date for the duration, and it's going to sum the product of the hours times the cost rate. So I had to know that the fields in the timesheet endpoint were hours times rate. It doesn't actually store the total, so you have to tell it to do that product itself. And then I want it to provide the sum of squares, line of best fit regression analysis across all of that. And then for the parameters, I'm going to tell it to put in, which is why it needs the project endpoint, the sector, the service line, project type, that should be project type, and location drop downs, and a cost range slider. Put the project name, start and end date as hover information on the scatter dots. Complete this and leave space on the canvas for 3 other charts that we're going to build. They're going to be in the subsequent webinars, not for this one. You'll have to watch the videos of those to see if they worked out. And then let me see the results in a web browser, and then I'll give you the other 3 charts subsequent. So that's my instructions to Claude. For you, to help you to know about that stuff, when you log into a UniPhi application, so before I hit enter, actually, you know what? I'll do that first because I've got to run along and do it. So let's hit enter there, and away goes Claude, thinking. Now, the interesting thing is when I first did it, I was in this Opus 4.8. I don't know if anyone else, probably some of you will know that this Fable 5, which is the large language model it's using, came out and was banned for a little while, and then it was unbanned. And so it's telling me that I've only got access to it until today, but it was a significant improvement on 4.8, which was pretty amazing to begin with. So we're using Fable 5, you can tell because it's listed down here. And it's off and running. It's going into its memory and remembering what it did, saying it's got a good memory, which is excellent. And it's going to go away and do some stuff. It might prompt me to run some things. I never do auto prompting because I just want to double check every time it uses something that it needs my permission. So you can see here it's going to use PowerShell. Don't worry about all that stuff. That's what you don't need to worry about. We just need to say allow once and enter. So it's going to keep going. It'll pop up as a notification on the right if I'm doing something else. So while it's doing all of that, I'm just going to bring across this. Now, in everyone's UniPhi application, in fact, I should go into that application first. Under the hamburger, you'll have API documentation. And when you click on that, it loads the Swagger documentation, which is here. And this is the endpoints that exist in UniPhi, which is why it had a bit of a coronary when it saw it and went, oh my goodness, this is massive. I've told it just to use this particular endpoint here and the project endpoint for all of its information, which I'm pretty sure is going to be enough. Now, how do I know that? Well, you can actually click on this and say get, and then just either put a project ID in or a person ID if you want to, or even if it's not too big a database, just click try it out, and it will take a little while because there's a bit of data in this one, and eventually show a response. And when you see that response, it'll show you the fields that it's outlaying. The alternative I mentioned before is that UniPhi has little sample Power BI files that we send out. And in there, it has all of these endpoints. And that's a subset of the endpoints, but it's a good start. And in the modeling section under manage relationships, it gives you the relationships between those so you can see how they relate. And if you go into the Power Query, which you can do in Excel as well, by the way, it's pretty cool. I use it a fair bit. If we've sent you this file, you'll be able to see the fields available in each of the files, right? So this is the Power Query view. And this is hitting the same database that Claude's going to hit. And if I just check on him and see if he's still working, nope, better keep him going. And come back in here. So this is where this MCP thing is going to come into the future. It'll improve performance, but at the moment we've got to live with REST API, which is still infinitely better than having to ask people to write SQL queries to access your data. In here, it doesn't have the timesheet endpoint, which is surprising. But if I go to the project endpoint, hopefully it loads soon. Let's tick off that one there. And back into here. You'll see that it's got the converted fields that you can have a look at there. So all of the fields that it's brought in. And if the timesheet one was in there, you'd be able to see that one as well. And you'd see that it's only got cost rate and charge rate, not total. It's also got hours, and it's got the entry date the person submitted the timesheet, and the project ID, which connects to this project, which enables me to then get the sector and the location and all that sort of stuff, so that it can do its analysis. Project custom fields is going to be used as well, potentially, and that's nested within the project endpoint. So you have to call it twice. Once gives you all the data that isn't custom fields, and the second time is the custom field. So that's worth telling Claude that if you know it. Otherwise, it'll kind of work it out, which is pretty cool as well. It'll work out a lot. And then it'll start to debate with itself. As you can see here, it says quoting got mangled. I'll write the probe script to a file instead. I don't really care about any of that. I'm just going to let it doing its thing. And so, yeah, it may come to a point where it needs more information, or it might just need me to keep clicking OK. The challenge of this webinar was always going to be, what do we do while we wait for that? So while it's still chugging along, we have a chat feature in the Zoom recording. And what I thought I could do is just, at the end of recordings, we often have a little time for chat. Often we run out of time. UniPhi 22 is coming up. There's a whole range of other features. Some have been talked about already via our website and LinkedIn. Were there any questions from what I've raised so far around Claude and generating an app, or in UniPhi in general, that I might be able to answer while we're watching it do its thing? Please don't be shy. You can use the chat, or you can unmute yourself to ask a question. Happy to answer it. Got the time. So this analytics model is a Python file, and that's where it's doing its calculations, just as an aside. At the moment, what I'm my vision mainly for it is a potential replacement of Power BI. Power BI is it's actually quite an old technology now. Still pretty powerful, but yeah, it's the ability to do the sorts of things it's doing, and the quality of the outcome when you see it at the end. What I did before is quite amazing from a charting perspective, and just the and John mentioned the other day, new CEO. One of the things that he's always had challenge with clients when he's been in the tech world for a while, and it's always about reporting and tweaking reporting and getting it to the way that your business needs it. So UniPhi is very flexible in its configuration of data capture. It's in the config, and then Power BI gave us the flexibility outputs. We still have developers writing reporting services and embedded dashboards, but yes, this thing gives you untold capability to do whatever you want. The question was also, have we used any other application to do this? This has been the best application by far. So yes, we have explored using, Claude Code is known for its software development capability. So I guess that's not me really saying much. But yeah, it's definitely the one to use. And yeah, we've had a lot of success with it. The list of all the features will be made available. In fact, let me go to that. That's a good question. In my little slide here, if I go to the next one. So this is a build-up to UniPhi 22. We're releasing it on the 3rd of August. The knowledge base will be updated with all new features in about 2 weeks' time. So we do our 3rd webinar in 2 weeks' time. That one is extending this a little bit. I'll explain it a little bit later on. And then on the 3rd of August, within 2 weeks, we'll be updating everyone's staging environment for them to do UAT. And then there's a mandatory go to production patch within 90 days of the staging date. And so you can liaise with account managers to work through that process. But yeah, all of the features will be made available to people to peruse in 2 weeks' time from today. Actually, it's a little bit less than that, around the 15th, so only a week now, of July. There's a webinar on the 21st, and I can take you through those then in that one as well. Another message, thank you. So yes, what I'm actually creating is a charting package, and its ability to create visuals is generic visuals is quite amazing. The one that I used in the slide deck a few slides ago was actually built by Claude, but this is going to create charts that are interactive through a React web application, so that I can play around with it. And the extent of that charting is quite significant. So we can really stretch its limits and test it. So it's about you coming up with what you need and what outputs from UniPhi you want to see. So for example, in the next webinar, what we're covering is we've created our own algorithm to translate data in UniPhi that's task related and people related. So it's very specific new architecture. It sits outside of UniPhi, so it's a new product. And what it does is it translates data in UniPhi for people and for tasks into a standard uniclass structure. So the tasks are random. People create them. They can mean whatever they want. But to be able to benchmark and analyze things like how much time do we need on a tunneling engineer to do a Western Harbour tunnel again, and things like that. We need standards, and it's hard to get people to code into standards. So you automate that through reclassification. And then that goes into a lake that people can then use Claude to build visualizations off. And that could be things like parametric modeling for estimating, visualizations of timelines, how long does it take to get through. So say a property developer, we could do the same thing for that type of translation. How long does it take to get through DA? How long does it take to get concept design? What's the standards for detailed design, tender documentation, construction phases for a specification? So you'd give it, an office tower of 20 stories or a residential tower in Sydney of such and such, and it'll be able to give you that sort of insights. So they're the sorts of things that I see coming out of this application and its capabilities. I'm probably missing clicking the button, so I better go back to Claude and give him a kick. So,
hey, Mark, it's John here. While we're waiting for Claude.
Yes, John, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. In other industries, I'm going to pause my question because it's this is now the really exciting bit.
Yeah,
not to say the rest wasn't exciting, Mark.
It's done. So this is using dummy data, but we now have a dashboard written in React. Now, it doesn't need to be React, and you can productionize this, and you'd need to work with Claude to productionize it, where you could then publish it. It will give me a URL that I can chuck into a web browser eventually. And it's doing things for me now, like changing the location and getting a different data set. I'd have to analyze it for accuracy and things like that, and maybe go back and tweak the calculations if it doesn't look very good. We're getting a lot of zero costs, zero durations, which is weird. But not a bad prototyping tool. Already got an answer. We've been on the call, probably running it. It says it's been working for 12 minutes now. So I don't know. Any thumbs up there, guys? I thought it was pretty cool.
Very cool.
So my goal is to expand this out to have a 4-chart feature. But I'll have a look at what its data is first. It's still actually working on it, so I can't interact. But as I said, eventually it'll give me a URL that I can put into a browser and have a play. I had to put the hovers in. I gave it too many requirements. So I think that sort of analysis, just purely straight on timesheets, could be interesting. It could even feed into that sort of benchmarking I was talking about for developers, but you might use that off. So in UniPhi, you can track budgets against lifecycle phases. So when the first actual comes in and the last actual goes out, you know the duration of that phase. Because one of the challenges is having people move a lifecycle phase from one to the other when so it's noticed some data issues as well, which is interesting. But if I just escape out of this PowerPoint for a minute and just go into UniPhi, like you can And we have some clients who put some structure around this in their own workflows where they sign off digital documents to move projects from one phase to another. That improves the accuracy of lifecycle dates, but you can't always rely on them. And so you can cross-reference that information with other data in the system. And this is what we're doing with the reclassification stuff. So if I go into that application again, and so you got people, somehow someone drew on my screen, which is impressive. To move these through phases, right? So you've got different phases here that a project's going through. And in our time module, we're tracking the schedule of that as it goes through. So if we look at a life cycle here, we can see across the portfolio projects going through different phases, and we should have an actual when they complete of how long that took. We can cross-reference that to, accruals the first time an invoice was raised within that phase, because projects are managed with budgets within phases. And so we know when that happened. If people are timesheeting, we can use the same thing. And that way you do get standard durations that are more accurate than just relying on people to update the data in the system correctly. And this is where this cross-referencing is key. But eventually you could use this data to drive those sorts of analysis and other interfaces. So instead of a scatter graph here, you would have perhaps a bar chart or even a Gantt showing you your life cycle phases and the average duration with some specifications here. The specifications for that would normally come from custom fields. So you would build custom fields on what's the fully enclosed covered area, what's the gross floor area, what's the uncovered area, what's the specification of, doors, floors, walls, you name it, create all those fields, put that content in. Another thing we're doing on that in very high profile projects, because we do a lot of infrastructure projects, is we're not giving the large language model anything, we're actually getting information from it. So it will update our data to say, okay, from the internet, what's publicly available, the specification of this road was it's a 6-lane highway. It goes in a tunnel. The tunnel is 14 kilometers. It's got such and such tunneling bore used, whatever the name was. They normally give them a name, and et cetera, et cetera. So we get a whole bunch of specifications we can then apply into these parameters and say, okay, for these types of specifications, how long would boring take? How long would the traffic modeling take? How long would a tunnel engineer need to be on site during construction? How many RFIs should I be expecting during construction? All those sorts of questions could start to be asked and answered, because I took 11 minutes to create a chart. So you just keep going. Let's have a look. Is it working now? Anyone affordable housing? Yeah. Should be a few commercial. There we go. But I've got to work out this cost issue. Probably our dummy data hasn't got a lot of timesheet entries in it. So that's an issue with playing with dummy data. But yeah, it's all fully functional. And that's the URL. So if I just click on that, I'm now in a web browser. This is Chrome, and it's laid out in Chrome for you to play with. See how my slider works. Not bad. So what my next steps would be, which we're going to have an early webinar this week because we've crushed it, but I'll just go back into my notes. So the guys coming tonight, we're going to populate this one and possibly the bottom two. Otherwise, it'll be for the Canadian one tomorrow morning. Just come across to Claude, and I'll go and type. So now I'm saying chart 2, column chart of average duration and cost, Z line. So duration Y, cost on the Z for each sector, with a legend displaying for the sector using the same logic for duration and cost of each project. So what it'll do is be the same sort of data set here, but instead of project dots, it'll have a column chart showing how long it takes to do different types of sectors. So all the sectors will be along the bottom with a legend, and we can see if there's any disparity between the time it takes to do an aged care facility versus a school versus a commercial building versus a retail shopping center, etc. I don't know if that'd be interesting. It's just easy to do. And that's it, guys. I hope that proved up the theory. All you need to do is go and get a yeah, absolutely. I can share the original prompts that I used up here at the beginning. Definitely. So all you need to do, I could probably do it in this chat if you wanted to copy it, but I'll get it communicated in the email that says that the recording is up. Let me just, oops, too many chats. Went to paste it in our company chat. that's what I started the Claude session off with. And yeah, get yourself a Claude license, work through the challenging bit, but it does help you every step of the way, will be setting up the environment. So again, the key you need to know, it's a basic forms authentication. Now, you might not be using basic. That's a good thing. There's one other thing to get across here, guys. A little bit of training, education, but crucial piece of knowledge that I forgot about. In the UniPhi application, there is under configuration, so admin people have access to this, an authentication interface. And you will enable or disable certain types of authentication. To do this, you need to have this enabled. We will be coming out with other methods for connecting to the API. Power BI is starting to get new ones, but for traditionally we've had to use this. But when we introduced the UniPhi ID and we've had Microsoft Authentication for quite a while, we had to keep this available. What it actually means, and this is a little bit complicated, but you actually have kind of two logins to UniPhi. So I'm logging into this system as a UniPhi, actually I'm not, but I could log into this system as a UniPhi ID. Most people on the call are probably logging into Microsoft, but you do need a basic authentication. So what you actually do is you go to your profile, which you can get to by clicking on your little avatar here, as an admin person. So you have to do this as admin. And again, you're going to need to get IT permission, I'm sure, to run all this stuff and to even install the Claude app. But what you do is you reset the password. Now, that's not resetting your Microsoft password, and it's not resetting UniPhi ID password. It's resetting your API password, which doesn't actually exist until you click that button because it's an older authentication. So the authentication method will be upgraded over time. And if you were to productionize what I just built, you'd probably create a service account and you can collaborate with our guys and your IT to get that to happen. But to start off with Claude, the way I did it, you click that reset. That would give you an email that you would click on the link and change the password, and that would be what you'd have to set. So what happens is Claude helps you do that in a nice, secure way. You don't actually have to you have to give it its password, but it's encrypted in a file that sits on your desktop, and it uses that to authenticate to the API. Otherwise, it can't get any data out. That's a little bit technical, but again, you've got a machine helping you step by step. Yeah, you'll need to remember to do that bit. Otherwise, you won't be able to get access to the data. Now, you would have already been doing that if you've been using Power BI, so you'd already be familiar with that process. And if you're one of our older clients who hasn't upgraded, well, that's coming. There is our old system was legacy forms authentication, so you already have it. It's the way you log in every day. Sorry to end on such a technical note. There's always a gotcha, but it wasn't too bad.
I don't think it's a ending on a technical note. I think it's quite an exciting note there, Mark, because I think this helps our clients unlock new potential in their data that was probably difficult sometimes to tap into, because there's plenty of reporting capabilities in the solution. There's plenty of reporting capabilities if you're plugging it in and using Power BI. But sometimes I think this is exciting when you have very obscure exploratory research or investigation or understanding you're trying to do with your data, which would typically involve downloading data, putting in spreadsheets, and following the bouncy ball and working it through, where now all of a sudden these capabilities allow you to do that with much richer data sets, much greater volume, and with a lot more ease. And I think that just accelerates getting from the data that UniPhi provides you to valuable insights really quickly, in a way you can also share very easily, put that on screen and show a sponsor what's happening or why we're trying to make a certain decision. So I think it's a really exciting kind of new way of working.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I can't believe how good its charting package is. We've had to buy charting packages for UniPhi. They're not cheap, and now Claude gives it to me for free. So that's it. As I mentioned, get yourself a Claude login, connect it to the API, give it some instructions, and see what you can create. I wouldn't mind you sharing them with us at some stage, not the details, but that you've had some success with it, and hopefully it unlocks some value out of the effort that everyone's gone into putting data into the system.
I'd second that, Mark. I think we'd love to hear customer feedback on what they've been able to do with the data and maybe this idea, because there'd be some great stories in it, no doubt, with what the audience here is able to do with it, I'm sure.
Yeah, and the webinar in general. Tell me if it's a good way for you to get some midday sleep or whether you actually get some value out of it. Thanks, guys. See you in 2 weeks' time, hopefully. Could be another one. And if you want to see how this ends up, you can see the videos of the other 2 webinars I'm doing in the next 24 hours. They'll be published. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the early mark. Thanks for attending.